Baseball is dead.
Rest in peace.
What the hell? That was a stuttering gong there, Ravvy. It is Wednesday, Hot Seat Wednesday, and joining us today on that very hot seat is Karl Ravech of ESPN. As we roll on, we had big shoes to fill, Ravvy. We had Tim Kurkjian on the first one. People were raving about that one. Bob Nightingale last week. Seat number 3 belongs to Ravvy, who has been on Baseball is Dead before, but not in this format. This is very different now, Ravvy. You nervous?
I wouldn't be nervous only because I don't know what the hell the hot seat is or what happened with Nightingale and Kurkjian. I'm sure Kurkjian took us down memory lane, though, to that night that Havens and Kurkjian and I were knee deep in whatever we were in inside of Franco's. And literally, I had to go to the hospital the next day because my stomach was hurting so bad. I went for some PT on my stomach muscles from laughing so hard.
He actually did bring that up.
Of course he did. You know why he brought that up? Because he called me the day before to say, Ravvy, that night in Williamsport when Havens and you and I were there, do you remember what it was that caused us to laugh? What was that? I said, Tim, I really, honest to God, I don't remember. I'm sure it was probably somebody that we were kind of having fun at the expense of. I don't know who that was, but I'm sure it was somebody, and that's where I dropped it. So I knew he was going to go down there. It's like when Buck Showalter used to run lines by us in the green room before a show, which was his trial balloon, although he never acknowledged it was the trial balloon. So if we responded in a favorable way, he'd use it on the air, and if not, he'd leave it in the green room.
That's the good stuff. It's the behind the scenes stuff. It's the car rides. It's the dinners.
Oh, yeah.
Do you have a favorite memory that's kind of like a behind the scenes thing? Kind of like how Tim broke out that story. I mean, that's a dinner. Like, do you have like a story where it's like the cameras weren't rolling?
I got a lot of them. Have I told the Fireball story yet? I mean, has that one come up yet?
No.
No, I mean, there's a Fireball story. There's a private jet story I could give you. I'll give you 3 sort of choices, and then you take A, B, or C.
Okay,
so,
just based on the titles.
Yeah, one is the Fireball story. One is the private jet story, and I would imagine the third one would be Raise the Jolly Roger story.
Okay. Okay. I feel like in the spirit of Dallas Braden being a big Pirates fan, I feel like we have to do the Raise the Jolly Roger story.
All right. Well, I'll touch on the other 2 if you guys have time. But the Raise the Jolly Roger story was such that we were doing a game, and Braden, please correct me on the details, which I may be a little foggy on. But Dallas was in the booth. Who else was in the booth? Just let me help with that. So it was Braden, me. Was Kurkjian there?
Yes, Timmy.
All right. Yeah. So me, Dallas, and Kurkjian doing a Pirate game, and I think the game was a blowout. So there's these, there's the Pirates on the bridge. And at some point around the 6th or 7th inning, we said, you know what would be cool? Send our Pirate out there to hang with him. And because Dallas had made claim that he knew every one of the people hanging on the bridge. Like, he became buddies with them. He's everybody's friend. He can relate to anybody, whether it's 2-legged or 4-legged. He's the best at that stuff. So he said, I'll go out there. And we sent Braden out to the bridge in Pittsburgh to hang with the Pirates. And if you didn't know Dallas Braden and you happened to walk by the bridge at that time, you would think he had been a lifelong Pirate. And nobody fit in better with the Pirate crew than Braden. It was the best thing we did that night for sure, and arguably for the season. It was tremendous television gold. Dallas Braden raised the Jolly Roger out there screaming and waving a flag, and the next day he gets laid off. Like what just happened? We just made television Emmy gold, and he's done. What? So what?
Well, and the best thing, this Ravvy, and I don't know if you remember this, but the best part about this is that night we're at the bar and we're talking about the game and we're talking about like the future and we're like, And we're like, yeah, like it's crazy, all this stuff going on. And I was like, my phone, I don't have a call yet. Like I was like, I've got to figure I'd be getting a phone call soon. And driver's like, come on, like we've just with what we're doing with like you just signed you're not going anywhere. And
locked in for years to come.
Legitimately the next day. Hey, so this is HR and this is going to be a one-way conversation. Yeah, Kirkchin. Timmy always talks about. That's one of Timmy's favorite stories too, Ravvy. But that was an incredible moment. Incredible.
What do you think was worse, Ravvy? Was it Dallas Braden getting laid off as a Pirate, or Joe Madden getting fired after shaving his head into a mohawk to fire up the boys in Anaheim?
Well, I mean, because Braden affected me personally, I'm going to always defer to my teammates. So yes. Braden being let go was the one that hurt more.
Yeah, and also,
look, he landed on his feet. I mean, he's on the Baseball is Dead podcast. He's clearly working for the A's. He's killing it. Now, do you go to Vegas with the team, Braden? Is that part of the deal, or have we not we haven't discussed that part yet?
Yeah, we're not there yet, Ravvy. This is what I always tell people: if Vegas is an eventual landing spot, I'm 5 hours right now from Oakland, California, where I sit in Los Angeles, and that's about 5 hours from Las Vegas as well. So effectively, nothing changes for me at all.
Right. And then you would take up residency in one of the musical halls or performance halls. We would have Dallas Braden on the off days, like Celine Dion and all the other acts out there. You'd have your own little theater. It'd be unbelievable.
Probably just off the strip, Ravvy. Probably just off the strip.
Dallas, what was worse, getting laid off as a Pirate or getting sent down on your birthday?
I got to say, probably getting sent down on my birthday, because I was then forced to watch the Big League Baseball game from the clubhouse that I wasn't really supposed to be in, but I definitely couldn't be down on the field because you're no longer a part of that team, you loser. So I guess just sit in the broom closet while your teammates finish this off, and then you can meet the team in Tulsa. Yeah, happy birthday.
I like that.
Probably that.
Ravvy, you've gotten to work with a lot of interesting people within the baseball realm. I'll even include a Justin Havens. Like, you get to work with some of the brightest baseball researchers, former players, analysts. Who would you say that, I don't want to say that you've learned the most from, but who opened your eyes to a perspective that you didn't see before?
That's a good one. I mean, that's a long list. I would imagine that the guy that caused me to look at the game differently, or the person, was probably, it's a good question. I would imagine if I were to give you a top three list, Showalter would probably be the first, because he absolutely brought up things that nobody else would bring up, whether it's a guy with freckles or a big ass. I mean, he would point to these attributes that he found to be important, let alone the way he looked at a field or the way he looked at fielders when a ball is hit to right. What is literally everybody doing? He caused you to watch everybody on the field and see how they're responding, because that's how he did it. And it was just different than anything I'd heard before. I think from a baseball playing perspective, and certainly pitching, my guy Schilling was unbelievable at his ability to kind of talk through approach to hitters, different hitters, fastballs, the way you pitch to certain guys. He was really, really deep in his thought process when it came to pitching. For as much ability as he had, I do think that given his start in the game and where he ended up, was another guy that opened my eyes up. I didn't get into, and I won't, but the fourth inside the Beltway story, which Havens can share with you off the air, was this horrifying ride that Justin Schilling and I made during spring training from one coast to the other, which by the time it ended, there was not enough Advil to get rid of the headache that we were suffering from. But that's a separate story. Sorry, it just sort of came into my consciousness during this thought about Schilling. But I'd say Showalter and Schilling, and it's no surprise that they have a mutual respect for each other when it comes to baseball. I mean, they are just they're really insightful, interesting people to talk about the sport of baseball. I have found, and the list goes on forever. Havens was phenomenal. We had such a good time during the Baseball Tonight heyday because of the idea that a researcher can really bring content to the show. I mean, that was a big thing for us when we would sit in meetings. We would implore everybody that sat around the table to please have an idea or two that you can share. And I know that, whether it was Justin and obviously Sarah Langs for what she used to bring to the table when she was in those meetings, you'd be like, yes, we're going to use that as a jumping off point and see if it plays out that night. So the research arm of Baseball Tonight and ESPN's baseball broadcasts have always been valuable.
Ravvy,
it's a nice mix. It's a nice mix.
Well, it is. It's a great mix. And I mean, that was something that when I came into the fold at ESPN that I noticed, you could see it was very apparent very quickly that this is different. When you have the responsibility that you have, at the tip of that spear, when it comes to the shows, comes to the broadcasts, and you do have individuals like Jayhay, you do have individuals like Sarah that you can utilize to a different extent, more so than just, hey, thanks for the packet you sent, thanks for the no, these are integral moving parts of what's going on. How much was there any sort of not debate, but there any sort of internal how do we do this when you have folks like this? Because there's a certain protocol you're sort of given to to do things and how to go about things. But when you know that you have gold off to the side like this and you want to make it a part of it, how do you do that?
Yeah, no, that's a good question, and I do think that there's been a deferral to people in positions that I think oftentimes was earned, but not necessarily the most productive as far as a broadcast goes. And I think having the years that I had there and on that program afforded me a voice to look around the room, even with people who may not necessarily see it that way and say, no, we have got to listen to what these people are saying. I've always been, and I hope that Justin and Braden can back it up, and anybody I've worked with, I'm as much about the group collaboration and recognizing where good ideas come from and what makes us better than I am about being the person that says, I need to have this, I need to say this. I mean, Jesus, we go back, to people like Mark Simon, who's got on to success in this industry, and so many different researchers who I know, and having conversations with them, and certainly with Sarah for a long time, a reluctance to sort of speak up. And I do think that sometimes some of the people that made them feel that way, I could see how you were made to feel that way. But over time, Dallas, we got to a place where we would literally open a meeting, and I give credit to the producers of our show. There's a guy still at ESPN named Judson Birch, who was very much encouraging of ideas, as interesting a guy as he is. And you talk about baseball fans and savants. You want a guy on your show, call that guy up and ask him to literally throw a date out from the Philadelphia Phillies. I think between this date in 2024 and any date he was alive, he will tell you exactly what happened on that date. He will tell you who the umpire was.
The umpires.
He'll imitate the umpire call, but I digress. His point was there's a lot of smart people in these rooms, and we need to get ideas from each and every one of them. And I champion that as much as anybody. I know my limitations. I don't bring as much to the table as the collective group. So let's use everybody.
And just to add a little bit to the environmental or cultural stuff that was going on with Baseball Tonight and the baseball project at large, I just, looking back on it now with some distance, I can't believe the level of debate and discourse and sometimes argument that was allowed to go on, not disrespectfully or inappropriately, but that was allowed to go on in the green room setting between people that ranged from as far as, Hall of Fame, either in the actual Hall of Fame or Hall of Fame caliber players, to someone in a role like me. I got into borderline yelling situations, heated, passionate debates about baseball and baseball usage and stuff like that with people that in a different environmental or cultural context would have had no business allowing me or someone in my position like that to talk to them like that, or to engage in that level of debate. And that starts with someone like in Ravvy's position, who's obviously, been the singular constant on that show or the baseball side for decades now. But it also, goes to the people at the very top from a producer side as well, because, I started at a certain point, sort of post Judson, the guy Ravvy was just talking about, but the people who oversaw the show during kind of my heyday were incredibly proactive about getting those opinions from, let's say, non-traditional places. I'm Ravvy. I'm obviously talking about Mike and Pete, but but yeah, it was just like, I've talked about the vibe on Baseball Tonight and like how in some ways that's, my favorite part of my, career, certainly the young portion of my career, but like, you can't overstate the level of conversation that was allowed from all directions and all roles within that green room setting.
Jared, we got into some unbelievable debates about candy as well. That was a big part of our...
I love candy.
Yeah.
Those were the best, really. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we would literally have top 10 lists. If you talk about healthy debate, I think Tootsie Rolls became deemed as prison candy. And I like Tootsie Rolls.
I did too.
I never understood that argument, but I think what we've all seen over the years in baseball is the introduction of analytics, the embracing of analytics, and maybe now to some extent a little pushback on some of them. But when you have guys, cruise into that green room like Nomar Garciaparra or Barry Larkin, you're bound to have really good conversations, and it's not something you you don't discard their opinion. They did it at the highest level and the best level. But if anything, reminds me that there are more than one way to look at something, and you have to value an opinion of a guy that hit like 350 for his career and one who's in the Hall of Fame. And I'm just using those two as just examples. You have to absolutely listen to them, and hopefully they listen to some of the things you said. But, look, stubbornness is what makes some of these athletes incredible. And they're going to stick to what it is they believe, and it has caused them to have great success. So be it. That's how they are. But I think over time, they probably look at things currently maybe a little bit differently. But it may not also have applied to those guys. Some of the things that people will say, that may not have literally applied to somebody like Nomar or somebody like Larkin. Somebody like Mike McFarland, Roy Smalley. The list of people that has sat in that set, for years is 60 to 70 deep. So their perspectives were so varied.
Not to belabor this portion of the conversation, but it's just like the debate thing sparked a memory that like one of my all-time favorite discussions, and Ravvy was a part of this, and Greg Colley, who's still producing on Baseball Tonight and obviously doing a great job there, as Karl will attest to. One of the great debates was with Tito. And it was before, obviously, when he was on the show, before he left to take the Cleveland job. That ride is also one of the all-time great.
Another great one, yep.
Maybe the best behind-the-scenes story.
That's right.
But we got into a debate about reliever usage, okay? And the idea that the old school traditional approach was that these guys are creatures of habit and that they cannot be asked to do something outside of their comfort zone, essentially, without, an enormous amount of heads up was the idea. And I'm not saying it was a direct one-to-one relationship here, but I'll never forget seeing Tito go back into the game and become the Cleveland manager, and the way that he managed that Cleveland bullpen. And I know Andrew Miller was a one-off talent. We've had that discussion previously. We don't need to do that again. But
hey, just a quick hello, Havens, from Christine to Dallas. And Jared, you were at the wedding, so Jared was down there. Yeah.
Yes.
Hey, Chris. Hello. Good to see you.
Great to see you.
Sorry to interrupt the story because I know it's a good one. Go ahead.
No. But it was great that it was cool to see Tito approach bullpen usage in a way that was not exactly the same as what it was when he left Boston or what he was doing in Philly or whatever. So that was just like, it felt like, wow, that's something we discussed behind the scenes that I'll always remember that actually in some way translated to something I saw on a baseball field.
Right.
Jayhay, that's a great point, because I wanted to ask you, Karl, this is a great segue, I think, to you talk about analytics and how they're looked at, how they're perceived, how they're used. I want to ask you about how you have adjusted to calling baseball games with the pitch timer. Because and I want to ask you this, because I have, and everybody that I talk to now, this is what I explain. Young broadcasters that come to me and ask me for advice, I talk to them about the pace of game, and I say this. I said, if you've ever heard about the 2-out rule, you need to know now that 2-out rule is now the 1-out rule. That has been changed. That now applies to the game with 1 out. And that's simply because of the pace of the game, the action that we see. So in a day and age where we're watching the game cycle back to appreciating the athletes of the game, we're also at a point where we're applying as much analytical information to the game and to the broadcasts as we've ever done. But we also have a pitch timer that makes marrying all of that a little more difficult than it's really ever been as well. So how do you find the balance between the 3 S's, the stats, the stories, the silence, with this new pitch timer?
Yeah. I never looked at it like an overwhelmingly challenging part of it. I just didn't. And I think a lot of this has to do with having been in a studio prior to transitioning to the real role of play-by-play guy, because we did have segments, we did have breaks. You were always kind of up against the clock. There were conversations that you could start that needed to end. So I never looked at it like this is going to be the end all. I happen to be dramatically in favor of a pitch clock. I think the pace is incredible. I think the one place where we have seen the impact of the pitch clock is when we would put a microphone on a player and an earpiece on a player, and it literally has guaranteed that half inning will last less than 2 minutes. It's almost a guarantee, because as much as you'd like to get out of this player, it never happens. It's a 1, 2, 3 inning. Sometimes it's a 12 pitch inning. They're running off before you can even get a fan question in. I mean, literally. And look, this Sunday when we're doing Mets Mariners, we'll have the 10-minute inning, but we haven't had that yet. It's always been the 10-second inning. That's the one place where I've realized that the pace is changed, because this is where we'd like to have an opportunity, to talk to the player. And all of a sudden that inning goes by so quickly that it's become a running joke. I mean, just to go back to 1 second to your point. So these debates that we have in the green room or with Francona, I literally recently was doing a Sunday night game, and one of the questions that I have was the clutch thing, whether that's a thing or not. And honest to God, one manager dismissed it wholeheartedly. The other manager 100% believes it's a thing. I mean, and that's the beauty of these types of debates. The 9th inning guy, can he pitch in the high leverage situation in the 7th? Is there something? So, whether the statistics, and this is where I think the rub on analytics sometimes meets the road, whether the numbers support the argument, it doesn't necessarily mean the people who are trying to perform will buy it. Because they believe something else. And that's, in a sense, where the conversation for those people oftentimes ends. They're not willing to necessarily look at the numbers. And there are so many guys who do and appreciate the numbers and have gotten so much better because of them. But you're going to bump into people who literally will say, every time Kyle Schwarber, every time Freddie Freeman, if I see Mookie Betts coming up in the postseason, we're in trouble. Like, there's something to it. And I could sit there, guys, and make the counter argument. And I use Tiger Woods as an example. I covered the tour in the late 90s and was at every major that he was winning and dominating. And this idea that Tiger Woods is the most clutch putter ever. And he was, because he made every putt. But by the same token, 15 years later, he's not making those putts. Now, did he lose the clutch gene, or did he just lose some of the talent that he had? So a lot of times they're associated like, well, the reason he's clutch is because he happens to be better than everybody. And when he comes up, he's going to get a hit. It doesn't mean you have it and lose it, but it's very, I think, easy as somebody who grew up in my era to think I'd rather have Larry Bird shooting that shot than Danny Ainge. Was he better? Yes. Then is he more clutch? Yeah, he is more. Like, I want him shooting that shot. I mean, Jared, you can appreciate that. You want Bird or Ainge taking a shot from the free throw line, with 2 seconds on the clock?
I mean, the answer is always going to be Larry Bird.
And is it because he's better or he's clutch? And I think they're associated, but I think very easy for people to say, well, he's clutch. Yeah, but he's also way better.
Yeah. Not to say this in a way to date you, Ravvy, but you have millions of reps in both studio work and calling baseball games. Is there a situation left in your life where you think you could get the jitters again? Is there someone that you could potentially work with where you could be like, oh my God, this is so fucking cool. Like, I'm working with so-and-so. Is it a game situation? Is it a game in which a historic moment could potentially happen? Is there something that could not take you off your game, but make you feel something that you don't normally feel?
Oof, that's a good one too. I'll be honest, I certainly haven't thought of that. I don't, thankfully, knock on wood, I haven't yet lost sleep over, holy crap, this is a game I'm going into, and I'm worried that this situation is going to present itself and how I'm going to handle it. I do think part of the importance and significance of the reps and the support of the people you work for is there's a comfort level in being able to recognize, that what you've done for so long has been accepted for so long, and people haven't discarded you, even though we all know social media discards everybody. It hasn't led to a moment where I'm like, oh my God. I mean, I had a horrifying moment at the College World Series a few years back when it was the top of the ninth and a guy hit a homer and everybody poured off of this dugout. And I looked down and I said, what the hell are they doing? Like, why are they all rushing the field? The game must be over. And I had thought it was a walk-off homer, and it wasn't a walk-off homer because I've never seen that reaction from any game I've ever done where everybody's pouring onto the field. That signals an end to me. And I got confused and lost it. But I think the other part of doing this for 30 some odd years is I certainly look around and recognize, like, let's not forget, whether they're the athletes you're covering or the people doing the broadcasts or the people behind the scenes, they're human, man. They bleed. They make mistakes. And it's okay. And if you work for people who recognize, like, as long as there's not too many of them and it's not something that's a big problem and it detracts from the broadcast, shit, we're all going to make mistakes. That happens, and you can kind of put it on a shelf and say, I learned from it. Let's make sure we're not going to react to what you see necessarily from a reaction standpoint. But Jared, I haven't thought about that. I haven't had it. The recurring nightmare, I think, for us as broadcasters, and certainly me, is somehow you have a show to do and you literally are having this dream that you can't get to the dang studio when the show starts. I mean, I've had that, like, that's a weird one, and it happens quite a bit. I've had others where I decided, it's time to leave and I want to go work at local TV. And in hindsight, I'm thinking, why the hell did I ever leave the greatest job I've ever, like that? Those are the kind of dreams that I have, or nightmares that keep me up, but none about a certain situation. I do think you become a little more human the longer you do it, and you can laugh at yourself, which is so important. I think I was reading this morning online that the broadcaster who called the Lyles 100-meter race, declared the other guy the winner, and it turns out that wasn't the case. But Lyles thought he had finished second, and everyone that watched, and I kept saying, because we were watching at a clubhouse, and I saw that guy's foot cross the line, and without knowing it's a torso, I'm like, didn't that foot beat him across? So, like, geez, that stuff happens. I never understood the venom that is social media. Only because I would never do something like that, to get out there and just rip somebody. Like, don't we have things that are better to do than that stuff?
Not for a lot of
No,
these
not
people
online.
out here, Ravvy. Not
No,
online.
I don't get it.
No,
Not on the internet.
no. I want to ask you because it was you and Eduardo on two separate occasions. Eduardo Perez is who I'm talking about. That put me in a are you fucking kidding me right now position. And I could talk about mine after, but I want to know, have you found yourself in a spot, or was there a moment in your career where you were challenged by somebody that was serving a role as, maybe somebody who was just kind of showing you the ropes, kind of bringing you along, giving you some advice here or there, and then all of a sudden, boom, you're just put in a spot like, oh God, and they're testing you. Have you had that sort of moment or that encounter?
Yeah, well, yes. I mean, and I tell this story. So in 1998, that's a long time ago, but 1998, were you born then, Havens? 1998? Were you even alive?
I was
then?
a freshman in high school.
I was born in 85. I'm a crusty vet, man.
So you were 13 years old. So
Yeah.
when Havens was celebrating his bar mitzvah, I get on a plane to Australia to cover the President's Cup, which is the golf match between the United States and the international team, not the European team, but the internationals. And I had a heart attack like 3 weeks prior to that. So getting on a plane to Australia probably wasn't the smartest thing, but I will say that the cardiologist said, okay, you can do it. So I went. And we get to Australia, which is, as you may or may not know, takes forever to get to. Like, it's not just a 3-hour flight. So we fly to Australia and we get to the Royal Melbourne Golf Course. It's Andy North and I, and it is 10 billion degrees, and we are sitting in a metal crate. If you've ever been to Little League World Series, you walk upstairs and you're in this exposed booth. This was a metal box, and it's 10 billion degrees out. We are drinking bottles of water, and none of us has to go take a pee because it is literally just coming out of us. So there's no bathroom break because it's not required. And I honestly, God, I thought we were there to cover the event, meaning we're going to report on it. And literally a half hour to 45 minutes before, they said, no, you're calling the event. And I'm like, what do you mean we're calling it? Yeah, you guys are doing the play-by-play in color of the first round of the President's Cup. And I had no idea. I had no idea that was going to happen. That threw me off my game. I'm like, what? How does this even work? I thought we were here to cover it. That was one. And the other one, which was just vintage, was during the KBO. We're all dealing with COVID, and it's the KBO, and we're doing these games. And for some reason, our first pitch is 25 minutes after the hour. So in our case, 5:25 a.m. Eastern time. At around 5 a.m., 5:15, we get word that Kia is not playing the KT Wiz anymore because that game's being rained out. So now it's Samsung playing whoever else, and I'm like, what? I have these rosters of KT and the Wiz, and now it's 5:15, and I'm in my house, and I said, shit, I got to print out the rosters for these two teams. So at 5:20, I'm trying to find the rosters online. I have to then print them. Everyone else in the house is sleeping. I am trying to print these things off. It's now 5:24, and I'm thinking, well, all right, let's look at my walk. I have at least until 5. Like, everything starts on a half hour, so I'm good till 5:30. I print this thing off, and I am walking back from where the printer is at one part to my bedroom. And through the headsets, which are laying on the table, I hear Eduardo Perez say, and welcome to the KBO on ESPN. I said, holy shit, we started. Why are we starting now? I don't even know who's playing in this game. And we've started the telecast, the first ever KBO game on ESPN. And poor Eduardo Perez has to say, good morning and welcome to the KBO, because I'm printing off the lineup of the Samsung and the KT Wiz, whatever it was. That threw me off my game. Like, oh, all right, Eddie, how we doing? How's this experiment working out?
Oh my God. That would scare the piss out of me to not have either roster and obviously there's going to be a name hurdle that you're going to have to clear here or there.
You think one or two?
That's a lot.
How about it? How do you think Eduardo felt? Got with 5, 4. Where the hell's Ravvy? Anybody see him? Did he fall? What happened to him?
Oh man, Eddie thought he was going to have to call 9 innings of KBO baseball 100%. By himself.
Yeah. So that would be the answer to that question. Sorry, I could just go down so many roads. Every time seeing you three here, the stories that have come up in my head since we started this about one of those, memorable things is there's so many of them. It's remarkable.
Well, it's
those KBO days were. I mean, that feels like a past life at this point. Like I remember
100%.
waking up at 5 a.m. Like during those first few months of COVID. There was no concept of time. Like we weren't going outside. We didn't have sports. We didn't have news. Like it wasn't even like, I think we're all used to the off season where we don't have baseball, but there's at least rumors. This was just like, hey, the league is shut down. We don't know when they're going to pick back up again. You want your fix? You want your baseball fix? You baseball crackheads? Well, why don't you wake up at 4:30 and tune into the KBO on ESPN? And I was like, sounds good to me. Like I was up live tweeting the LG Twins. I'm like, let's go.
There you go.
They're playing the Dinos. Let's go.
Yeah, we love the Dinos. The Dinos won the championship that year. They had a great catcher. But yeah, you're right. And strangely, as you guys know, there are people who will do that. And it became a weird little mini cult of people that woke up and literally knew some of the names of the players. They knew the American players.
There was a realignment. It was like baseball fandom realignment where
100%.
Once the KBO was the only game in town, you had Red Sox fans, everyone picked their team, and you had Red Sox fans and Yankee fans being like, well, I'm an LG Twins fan, so like I guess we're a part of the same fan base now. It was like, it was very weird. It was like in what was that? The 2006 World Baseball Classic when Jason Varitek and A-Rod were on the same team after they just fought each other. And it's like, I guess we're on the same team. I don't know. Like that's what the KBO experienced was. It was a wild time, but I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah. No, we loved it. And trust me, given what everybody else was doing, it was such a unique opportunity, and we are all, anybody that worked on it, as weird as those hours were, we're so grateful to have something to do with regards to sports, and it was hilarious. I still have what ultimately became known as Live from Home, so LFH. I have LFH kit 001, and I refuse to ever give it up. But it was the first computer that was put in somebody's home from ESPN. I'm not saying we were the first to ever do it that way, but I was the first to have Live from Home kit 001. And during the pandemic, I had some technician guys who set this all up. Jared, guys, we threw extension cords over our roof just in order to make sure this worked. So we had cables literally on the outside of the house in order to plug into different outlets, and they were over the roof to make that happen. It was bizarre, but it was wonderful.
But you pulled it off.
We pulled it off. Remarkably, we pulled it off, and in a lot of ways, that COVID and the pandemic led to so many broadcasts being done this way, the way you're doing it. I mean, they're all rooted in I think COVID. This idea you can do this stuff as effectively and as well as you guys do it has to do with the idea that you don't have to leave your home anymore. And we can all debate whether that's a good thing or not, but it certainly led to all this stuff.
I go outside sometimes. I get the mail. There's a place to get slush at the end of my street. I go there sometimes. Nice little half.
Is that a 7-Eleven? We go still 7-Eleven? Where are we going? Cumberland Farms? Where are you getting your slushies?
This is it's a local in town market. Go down there, get a little slush action going. But I mean, to your point though about being able to do it from home, like, do you, as someone who does this about as professionally as possible, do you look at like other forms of media and embrace it? Like, is it all encompassing? Is there enough, space in the sandbox for everyone, or is there some of it where it's like, this is a little too clickbaity? I don't know why that's popular.
No, I would say, given the fact that I was in the middle of the live from home stuff to begin with, I'm more on the embracing side of all of it. Again, when I did the PGA Tour, for people that don't necessarily know, when you call golf, you're at the course, but it's not as if you're calling it off the guy's club by watching the ball in the air and land on the green. You are calling it off of a television monitor. It can be done from anywhere. That's how you call golf. I mean, I don't know what percentage of the Olympics are currently being broadcast from Stamford, Connecticut, but my gosh, it's an enormous amount that's being called off of a monitor. The Zoom thing changed everything. And it was not only did we do the games from our home, but then we would actually have people Zoom in from the clubhouse of the LG twins. And they would do it from their house or apartment. You know, we'd have wives on of guys that were pitching. Drew Rosinski was a name that pops into my head. Like, he was a guy that we would talk to, and he would give us a tour of the clubhouse using Zoom on his phone while we were doing a telecast in the United States from South Korea. I mean, none of it made any intellectual sense, but it all works. So I embrace it all. And as you guys just saw, my wife, Chris, like, she's big on following Instagram stuff. Like, I don't necessarily do that. But when I say, what is that? Like, what are you doing? She points to some benefit of doing it, like whether it's recipes or clothes. And okay, if that's working, like, I don't necessarily do that, but clearly there's a market for it. So I'm embracing of it.
That's kind of what we're doing now. Like, I'm calling Red Sox games on Tuesdays, but we're doing it from the Nesson studio.
Yeah.
So we're calling it from the monitor. We're not necessarily doing play-by-play and color analysis, but there are definitely points over the course of the game where the conversation in studio stops and we have to lock into what's happening. It's like bases loaded, 1-run game, Raffy's up. We're down 1. We got to lock it in. And you can just see us all on the couch. We're just like leaning in to like look at the screen. Do you think it'll ever get to a point, I guess for both of you, Dallas too, where you'll see more MLB broadcasts or just sports broadcasts in general being done from a studio versus being there?
Well, I'll answer it, and then Dallas can chime in. I think every alternate broadcast that's being done. So you have the traditional, then you have the alternate. Whether it's the Manning cast, that it's generally never done from the stadium, from the ballpark, from the arena. It's done from a couch. It's done from a garage. It's done from a house. Is there a place for those? Clearly, there is. And again, it's different voices. It's you. It's whoever you're working with. It's just another way to get people to tune into the platform that they are trying to have exposed as much as possible. There seems to be enough pushback from people who are decision makers to say, we'd like to be there. It's better when you're there. I absolutely agree that it's better when you're there. I also would make the case, I'm not certain that the average viewer would know whether you're there or not. I just don't think that they would know that if you become adept at it. And having done both, yes, you can, during an SEC basketball game, watch John Calipari when the TV is focused on that end of the court and you're down there looking at him screaming at a player. You're watching the interaction between an official and an assistant coach, and you realize this is escalating and there's a jump shot that's being made. So when you're at home, you lose that perspective generally. But I don't think it goes 100% that way. God willing, we don't have another pandemic that requires people not to travel. But it has proven that it can be done that way. That's for sure.
Sure.
Yeah, it's a proven adjustment. It's something that everybody has done an incredible job of on the fly doing so, because what we watched production crews and ourselves have to do is something that you see sometimes in the big leagues, which is guys learning at this level. That's not something that everybody's afforded an opportunity to do. So when you have an entire crews across the game, across sport in general, figuring out how to do that and make that adjustment, that's what's impressive about that. But I always do think that they're alternative broadcasts for a reason, not necessarily meant to compete with the traditional way the games or the events are delivered, but by design and by name, an alternate way to absorb this, to take this action in. And so that can be done and has proven to be able to be done remotely. But there is something to be said for everything that you just said, Ravvy, about being in the booth while a pitch is being thrown. I can look into the dugout, or I might have a line of sight that is showing me something that can lead to me making a point about the game that you're watching right now that I wouldn't have access to otherwise if I was in a studio, not able to see what's unfolding. You know, I've called games. Yeah. I've called games with virtual reality games where I'm watching the game on a headset and I'm taking all the fans who are watching through this journey, through this tour, because they're on a headset. And that's very different. They're watching the game from the end of the bench perspective. And then I tell them, hey, that's great. Let's go down to the other end of the bench and take a look at what we're seeing on the pitcher's perspective. So you can do this a multitude of ways. I think that people who get all up in arms and are like, well, I don't like this broadcast. It's not what I want. That's the idea. It's an alternate option. It's not what they're force feeding you. This also exists. You can do it this way too.
You mean you don't live in virtual reality every day without the benefit of those goggles? I thought you did have. I thought you were a virtual reality guy.
I walk around with goggles on, Ravvy, pretty much every day, all day.
I will say this as a closing on that question, Jared, is yes. By being there, there's a credibility part of it too.
I agree.
When you get a chance to interact with the players and the managers and they see you there versus not, it's very easy for them to feel distant when you're calling a game from somewhere else. I mean, early in my career when I was on SportsCenter all the time, and I subsequently then went out to events, people would crush some of the anchors for some of the things they said. How the hell do they know? They're never here. You know, they hide, in a sense, they hide behind the television screen, similar to people on social media who hide behind the phone. Well, how come they're never here? And literally by association of working at the same network or being on the same show, therefore, if he or she said that, you must feel that same way. And that interaction of being one-on-one with a manager or with the player allows them to either ask you questions or just to see you there. And there is a credibility part that goes with it that is the benefit of being on site.
Yeah, we just got an earful of that a couple of weeks ago. Red Sox, Yankees. You know, we haven't been at Fenway much this year. And we got a lot of like, look who it is, look who showed up, and blah, 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 where you been, all that. Right. So they notice when we're not there as much. But like, you know, for us, there also has to be a value to it. You know, like I think with, and I'm sure you've noticed this too in your travels to other baseball parks. Like the players of today are not it's not that they're not friendly, but they're just robots. They go about their business. They go in, they hit, and they don't interact. Like we went from, you know, I would sit in a dugout and guys would come up, sit down. How's your family? How's everything going? What you been up to? Talking about this and that. And now it's just like they go out, they hit, they go back down. They're looking at the iPad. They're in the cage. They're getting their work in. All like they're just not as interactive. So that's why we're not hiding, but it was genuinely just like, are we getting a return on our time investment by being around as much as we used to be? And the answer was no. So we were just like, all right, well.
I would say that's a significant aspect to the game that needs to be addressed by the Players Association, by Major League Baseball, is the access. And I'm not talking about the access during a game where you put a microphone and an earpiece in a player. I'm talking about the access when you walk into a clubhouse a couple of hours before the game. There's nobody in the clubhouse. They literally have come up with their own player den, if you will, where they go and that's where they hang out. And I don't know why it exists, but there appears to be still this feeling of it's us against them, or they're not here other than to get you into a gotcha moment. And I'm sensitive to those that have been burned by it. But speaking for myself, there's like zero interest in putting a player in an uncomfortable situation or going in there with an attempt to get some information that I'm going to use that's going to screw them. Like that doesn't exist. And yet there's this feeling, I'm not saying it's accurate, but there's this feeling of mistrust amongst some members of the media. And that may be rooted in reality of being burned. But the idea that you walk into a clubhouse and having done it for so long and hanging out with, whether it's Dustin Pedroia in Boston or other players around the country, it was very easy. Like, we're not here to hurt you. It only makes the broadcast better. We're here to help inform the audience, entertain the audience. Some of the stories these guys will tell you, around the cage only make for a better broadcast. And this idea that you can't find 90% of them prior to a game is really, really challenging and difficult. And I hope it's something that Major League Baseball, the Players Association, addresses, because it's not serving the player, and it's certainly not serving the broadcast or the audience.
Ravvy, is there any thought to, because of the day and age in social media and players saying, we're just not going to ever even give anybody outside of my circle an opportunity to impact the narrative? Meaning, I have social media, so the stories that I want to share, I will share. And they can come to my channel and they can see them, because I can also monetize that information. I can monetize that exchange. Why would I tell my story on air here and receive nothing back, especially if it's an entity and not just one place, but they feel this way about the larger media in general? Why would I do that if there's really nothing in it for me? In a day and age where if I tell that same story on my YouTube channel, I get the views, I get the clicks, I get the subscriptions, I get the money. Or I could run the risk of having that narrative twisted and divulged very differently. Is there any thought to that?
I don't think so. It's because I do think that the platform that the networks and or other larger entities provide is to increase the awareness of your brand. It's one thing to have your own YouTube channel, but it's another thing to be watched by 2 to 5 million people every week. I mean, if you want to have a YouTube channel, how do you generate the interest in it without being popularized by the networks, et cetera? So I don't think that we get there. I think that will determine the evolution of the way that we consume these games. If you have every single athlete with their own YouTube channel, I don't think that works either. So I don't think that happens in our lifetime as broadcasters. I think that there have been efforts to do that, whether it was the Players Tribune or others, where the idea was give the athlete the voice, let them present it in their form. But I still think you need the larger appeal and exposure the other way to make those things relevant. And I think it has served athletes and politicians and everyone else in a big, big way to be exposed in the greatest way possible before you narrow it down to just your specific channel or page or Instagram account.
I don't know how involved you are in this process or how privy you are to the behind the scenes, but how difficult or how easy is it for ESPN to get someone for Sunday Night Baseball to wear the mic?
It's not simple. I mean, there are players that don't want to do it, which I have complete respect for. We've run into managers who would prefer a certain player not to do it because they'd just concentrate on the game. So it's we run it up the flagpole. Major League Baseball helps a great deal in that endeavor. I think one of the lessons we've learned, though, it's not necessarily the biggest name on the team that provides the best content. You've all been in clubhouses before. The 23rd player on the team may be the most interesting, entertaining guy as opposed to the superstar. And for our perspective, my perspective, I've learned quite well. And I think it's evolved to this place. This guy's going to be on for half an inning. We'd rather it be entertaining and informative than we would be just the big name. And big names have succeeded dramatically. Mookie Betts was arguably the best we've ever had do it. Everyone knows Mookie Betts. But by the same token, we've had lesser known players who were tremendous. So it works both ways. But people say no. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Not everybody raises their hand and says, I'm in on that. And that's perfectly fine.
I get it. I get it when they say no, but it's like it's a smaller microcosm of like the Mike Trout thing, where it's like you have this special talent. They want you to be the face of baseball. You don't want to extend yourself to be that person. And with wearing the mic for Sunday Night Baseball, it's like, well, don't you want to share your personality? Like, don't you want to give fans more of a reason to root for you by letting them in on the human being behind the player? And I respect it when players are like, I actually don't care about that. Yeah, like if that's their reaction, it's like, yeah, I don't really like, I'd rather just you cheer me because I'm good at baseball and you boo me if I suck. Like, that's fine. Like, I don't need you to cheer me because of a funny story that I told or whatever. Like, if that's just how you are as a personality, then I have no choice but to respect that decision.
I agree. I think there are players who absolutely say, I don't need it. I don't particularly want it. It'd be fascinating where Derek Jeter would have fallen if this were a thing back when he was playing and starring. I don't get the sense he would be like, yeah, let's do it. I can't wait for this. This is going to be great. By the same token, I think a guy like Ohtani, who is the face of baseball right now, has done minimal stuff, but the stuff he has done gives you a peek into who this guy is. And I think that's really valuable from a consumer perspective. I don't know if it's valuable to him at all. He's clearly doing okay. He doesn't need that. But I do think there's a benefit for people like Ohtani to expose themselves even slightly in a way that they otherwise wouldn't. I mean, Eduardo seems to have this minimal relationship with Shohei, whether it was, I think it might have been the cleats that he had shown, or he asked about his cleats. And it just gave a little peek into the window of the Ohtani world that most of us on a personal level are blocked out from. Yeah, Jared, I think there are going to be those that say, I don't need to do it. I think others realize this is a good thing for me and my brand. And there's also a trust factor. I think that you've got to have the players' trust to know that. And I make a big deal out of it on Sunday prior to coming back from commercial, letting them know, unless we get caught, I'm not going to sit here and ask you a question when the pitch is being thrown. And you should stop talking when a pitch is being thrown. Just pick it back up when you're done. And we've had that happen. A ball's been hit to Brandon Marsh in left field. We're in the middle of a conversation. He makes the play and continues without me having to prompt him as he's running off the field about a name of a band and who would be in it. And he finished when he got to his dugout. It was phenomenal. Brandon Marsh is not the biggest name on the Phillies, and he was as good a Sunday night interview as we've ever had.
That's what it is. It's like sometimes it's just about getting the right personality to take the mic 100%. Versus the biggest name. Yeah, I completely agree with that. Ravvy, thank you so much for taking the time today. I know we sucked up an hour of your day, but we really do appreciate it. Dallas also has to catch a bus or whatever the hell what do the A's have you on, mopeds?
I gotta drive to Oakland right now and then call the game. Yeah, we're going to Toronto and New York.
Got it. But Ravvy, thank you so much for taking the time today.
Anytime. I enjoy all three of you. You guys are great and important people, so I appreciate it. And thanks for having me on.
Thank you
Great
so
to
much.
See you, buddy.
Yeah, we'll see you down the road. Dallas, we couldn't let you leave before addressing the fact that the Oakland A's lost a Major League Baseball game.
Of course. What a fucking coward, man. It's crazy.
I have no respect for Dallas Braden. None.
What does Ravvy think?
What a cowardly act by Dallas Braden.
No, he's gone too.
Yeah, no one wants to talk about it. Fine. The MLB season is in full swing, and Underdog Fantasy wants to make it a lot more interesting. Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports. Playing their pick'em game is as simple as selecting higher or lower on player stats, strikeouts, total bases, home runs, and so much more. Make entries of all baseball, or you can mix and match across your other favorite sports. You can win up to 100 times your money, and it's a ton of fun. Did you see Joey's tweet yesterday about the White Sox?
About the betting, if you had placed whatever dollars, you would have made 700,000 or whatever.
Yeah, here it is.
I did see that.
If you bet $100 on the White Sox to lose on July 10th, took that money and bet them to lose the next day, then kept repeating every day until today, you would have made $765,405 in 27 days. A lot of money.
It is. Although if you would have put it down again last night, you would have lost it all.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
It's true. So It is what it is. But make sure you sign up with the promo code Jared. That's Jared to get up to $250 in bonus cash and a special pick on Underdog. That's Underdog Fantasy, promo code Jared. I guess we're left to talk about it.
Let's do it, man. I'm prepared to talk about everything you sent. Let's forget the rest of these fools.
Yeah, let's talk. Chicago White Sox have won a Major League Baseball game.
Yep. Congratulations.
Thus ending the losing streak at 21 games. Jess Kleinschmidt had the tweet before the game that they were playing that 22 song by Taylor Swift during BP when the White Sox were taking BP.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the baseball gods don't like that. Just let it be. Just let it be. You can't be doing stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, the A's have been a lot better than the White Sox this year, but that feels like, maybe you're not that far removed yourself from being an utter disgrace and may still be a disgrace in the future. So maybe don't kick another team while they're down. I don't know. I think if we all, as much fun as we had with the Joey nugget about the potential fireworks coming in the Friday Cubs game if they were to lose the Oakland series, I think we all knew deep in our hearts that the Oakland A's were not going to sweep the White Sox, and they didn't. And we'll see how today's game goes, but it's disappointing, if not surprising. I mean, truly the first thing that stuck out to me, Ross Stripling lost it for him.
Chicken strip.
And the only reason it was Ross Stripling is because I'm sure Alex Wood wasn't available to take the L, but Stripling with a 5.72 ERA this season, and he's the one that drops the ball. But also shout out to Andrew Benintendi.
Caught the final out.
He's
been hitting very well. He's been hitting very well over the life of the losing streak.
Well, he caught some flack from some viral online videos a couple of weeks ago. We won't need to get into that, but he did have a home run and he caught the final out. So nice combo for him. Kind of crazy Dallas ran off without even addressing it, but you know what the good thing is we're potting tomorrow too.
That's true. He can't avoid it forever.
No, he cannot run forever. Plus you know what? Now that we're just kind of digressing, tough week for DB because you're talking about they are the team that loses to the White Sox. He didn't get the guess the player on Monday.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah. He didn't even come close.
You have to wonder how his head is going into feud tomorrow now.
Yeah. Ooh, I don't like that. And is he supposed to go first? No, I'm going first.
No, you're going first. So he's the closer in theory. He really, you guys could debate amongst yourselves who's the better feud player between the two of you, but there's no question that when Dallas hears the sound, he reacts very poorly. He doesn't do well with that setback. No. It usually costs him 5 to 10 seconds. So very interested to see how that goes. I don't think he's in the right headspace right now. And we don't even know what happens today. They could lose the series.
It could get worse. It could get worse for Dallas Braden. And I would hate to see that. Because that's my teammate out there. Mm-hmm. I got to go to battle with this guy who is not mentally equipped to perform under pressure.
Well, I mean, it's kind of like the clutch conversation that we had with Ravvy, right? Like the guy threw a perfect game.
Mm-hmm. He's
now, whatever it is, well over a decade older than he was at the time of that perfect game. And, did he lose his clutch factor or did he lose some of his skills and talents? It's kind of up for debate with DB, I think.
It's so sad, man. The guy's job, he gets paid for this. You do know that this is not like a hobby for Dallas. Like he gets paid to do this. And then one time The one time that the A's were relevant, actually relevant, not just talking about like JP Sears or whatever.
Yeah. Shout out to some dickhead at the end of the podcast. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like, oh yeah,
dickhead
this
is better than
guy.
you.
Yeah. But
Some
maybe
of them.
not.
Some of them.
Yeah.
I guess we won't
He
know.
just-
I mean, I haven't been given the opportunity.
Guy just runs for the hills.
Well, we'll see him tomorrow and we'll corner him then. We'll get him right off the top of the podcast so, he can't run away.
I was on the Kirk Minahan show yesterday.
I'm sorry.
Terrible performance by me.
Oh, in what way?
I
Like,
just
what do they do on that show? I've never listened. I know who
it's
he
more
is.
just like it's a talk show.
Yeah, right. Okay.
They'll talk about anything. But for me, I'm just not living that barstool life anymore. Like I don't have the funny stories that I used to have because I don't got it like that anymore.
So he
But
had
one
you
thing
on
that-
to try and yuck it up and you just didn't have, the crazy content he wanted or what?
It's not like he doesn't care. Yeah, no, it's more just like the fan reaction, which I said on the show. I was like, I
The
agree
mini
with it.
fans?
Yeah, I was like, I agree with you guys. Like, I don't, I was like, I'm more than happy to just, the only time I'm ever in front of a microphone for the rest of my life to just talk about baseball. I don't need to, like, I just can't, I don't have it in me anymore to do the crazy stories because they're just not happening. But
There's real value in boring.
yeah, I'm happy. Like I'm happy living my boring life. This is what I wanted. I just want to chill, talk baseball, and it is what it is. But one thing that did come up on the show with Kirk is, so he's no longer like a huge baseball fan, but like he has an encyclopedic knowledge of baseball from like the 90s prior.
Okay.
So we were talking about an episode where he would come on as a guest.
Okay.
Saving it for the off season. But if we were to do a top 20 MLB players of all time who are still alive
Okay.
and not connected to PEDs in any way.
I mean, I'll participate, sure. I mean, I think we may have to. The not connected thing may get a little tricky for some guys.
It's going to be convoluted, yes.
But whatever parameters we want to set on this debate construct, I will participate.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm down. Sure.
Top 20, I mean,
I'll argue with anybody about stupid lists like that.
I love stupid lists.
Yeah, and I've never talked to Kirk, so if he's got an encyclopedic knowledge of baseball, that sounds like it'll be a fun time.
He used to write the bios for baseball cards back in the day.
Oh, really?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That's a funny background.
Mm-hmm.
If I may ask, was there a passionate debate, a mini debate about one guy or something that set off this thing when you were on the show? Or
he asked me who I thought it was.
Oh, just the number one greatest?
Just the number one.
Okay.
And I guess it can be debated, but I don't know. I like, is Ken Griffey Jr. the answer to that question?
All right. So we'll do a little preview debate, I guess, right here. Let's see. Greatest. I haven't thought about greatest living non-PED guy off the top of my head. So I'm going to need a second.
Just like the first that comes to mind. Like,
my instinct is that no, it's not Griffey. My immediate instinct is that it's no. I think the other tricky part here is that, are we including pitchers? Because I would argue there's okay, then I would argue it's one of the pitchers from the 90s that would have a claim.
Like a Randy
one of
Johnson.
Whoever you deem as the greatest pitcher of Randy, Pedro, and Maddox, since we're throwing Roger Clemens out, between those three, I think would have the cleanest claim as the greatest living non-PED player. Much cleaner than Griff.
What about Ricky Henderson?
So that was going to be my very next point, was that I don't think you can convincingly argue that Ken Griffey Jr. had a better overall career than Ricky Henderson. Like, Ricky Henderson is like, I feel like I feel like in some ways Ricky, because there's so much distance now with his career, has been, because even I only got like the back end of Ricky's prime, really, as a very, very young person. I did have his poster, though. Ricky was one of my favorites as a very young kid. He almost gets pigeonholed into being like, oh, that's the guy who stole a ton of bases back when people cared about stealing bases. And yes, that is his most famous claim. That's the most famous imagery of him, all of that stuff. Dude also won an MVP. Dude was in multiple other MVP conversations and has a career .401 on base percentage and 297 homers. He was incredibly valuable. And if we're gonna go with a position player, I would much rather throw my hat behind Ricky Henderson than Ken Griffey. Another name I'll throw out there,
Albert Pujols.
I think Pujols deserves to be in this conversation. I also think Mike Schmidt deserves to be in this conversation.
I agree.
Greatest third baseman of all time. And I just don't think he gets his flowers, as probably because most people just don't have the conversation this way. And Mays and Aaron have kind of, there's been no debate on if you want to throw Bonds kind of in this own corner, like who else is that answer? It's going to be Mays or Aaron. They are the best ambassadors for the game that you could possibly ask for. But Mike Schmidt is the greatest ever at his own position. And whether you're looking at traditional stats or advanced stats, he would also have a better claim, I think, than Ken Griffey Jr.
You know who else is in that conversation that I know? Some people have called him a compiler.
Go ahead.
Some people have said he just hung around for a long time.
Yep.
But I think we're going to be surprised to see just how high Carl Yastrzemski ranks.
Okay.
As one of the best living non-steroid guys of all time.
I thought you were going Cal there. I thought you were going to, I think Cal. Actually what you described with Yastrzemski, excuse me,
can also be said about Cal.
Applies to Cal in a lot of ways too, if you want to be a hater or a detractor.
They're right there.
Yeah, I would put, so again, I reserve the right to change my mind between now and whenever we have the official rankings with Kirk. But my first tentative answer would be one of the three pitchers. My second answer would be Ricky or Mike Schmidt. And then I think there is a gap down to Griffey, Yastrzemski, Cal Ripken, George
Beltre.
Brett.
George Brett.
Yeah, I know where Beltre ranks on the WAR list, and I'm not saying that he doesn't deserve to rank there. I think he's got a similar case to maybe Ripken or something like that, but I think I would put Mike Schmidt and Ricky Henderson like comfortably ahead of the Adrian Beltre portion of the conversation.
Would you have Wade Boggs higher than Beltre on your list?
I would need to look into that a little closer. I think I would have them in the same general category. And here's another guy that I will throw out there as a guy I think I would have ahead of all of these people, sub Ricky and Schmidt, Mike Trout. Because I think Mike Trout is, if we're going to just ballpark it, essentially in the same realm of production as guys like Ripken and Beltre and Boggs. And no one here is going to debate whether Mike Trout had the best peak of those guys or not. Maybe best single season. I know Cal Ripken's got that 11 WAR season or whatever, but like the best peak belongs to Mike Trout. So I think he would also be in that second tier of the conversation. But one of the pitchers, Schmidt, Henderson, I think are the top five for me.
Then you just named one. But we're going to start getting into the active players.
Absolutely.
Like there's going to be several active players, I think, that make the cut, like Kershaw, Verlander.
Totally. Trout, Kershaw, Verlander, Scherzer. I think all of those guys are generally in the conversation for what we're talking about. I would guess there's no other, unless somebody's going to put Shohei Ohtani in there on some sort of, peak, and maybe I will be that person. But I think that's probably what we're looking at. Because, there are some guys here who we haven't even talked about who, like Bert Blyleven, for example. Like he pretty much undeniably has to be part of one of the 20 greatest living players going, given that he's in the Hall of Fame and he's a pitcher. Like, how many living pitchers are there better than him? I don't think. Steve Carlton, another guy that
Pedro's not been mentioned.
No. Pedro was one of the. I included him in the big three. Yeah, with Maddox and Unit. I think Pedro definitely has a claim on this.
Nolan Ryan is still alive, for the record.
Yep. Pedro will be comfortably inside my top 10 in this conversation for living players. There's no question.
I'm very excited to make this list now.
Yeah, I may spend some time today doing it. Get ahead of this.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited to.
This is like my wheelhouse.
Crack down on this list. The top 20 alive best players.
We should tell Dallas a different recording time.
We'll just make it us and Kurt.
Yeah, we'll just ask him for his picks afterwards and put it on the graphic.
Do you think Curt Schilling will make your cut?
No, I don't.
Is that for personal reasons or baseball reasons?
No. Definitely not. No. I mean, I'm putting somebody like Frank Thomas, who we haven't brought up. I'm putting Frank Thomas over Curt Schilling. I'm putting Jim Thome over Curt Schilling. These are names we haven't mentioned.
Yep.
Reggie Jackson. Johnny Bench is still alive. Let's holler at Johnny Bench for a second. Maybe the greatest catcher of all time, still living.
Yeah.
A lot of good names.
Fergie Jenkins is still alive, yeah. I think he was just at Fenway.
I didn't see him at Fenway. That doesn't mean he's not. He's
big time alive.
Is Miguel Cabrera going to get love from you?
Ooh,
there's a name we haven't said yet.
See,
Ryan Sandberg.
I think that there's that top 5 tier, and then
good luck to you.
Yeah, it's very debatable after that.
Jim Palmer's still alive.
Like, who makes that 15 cut? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Because in total, we've probably named about 25 other names. Tim Raines, still a living player.
Yeah. Rod Carew, still a living player. Tom Glavine, still alive.
The Hoffer himself, Barry Larkin, still very much alive.
Yeah. Jeff Bagwell's kicking around somewhere.
Jeets
and
is Mariano? Alive.
Well, Jeets did HGH allegedly.
Oh boy. Okay. So I guess this is going to be a Boston area friendly podcast.
Justin Havens. Justin Havens. The parameters where they can't be linked to PEDs
I have not seen this.
In 2014, I'll pull it up right now. I'll read you the article.
So let me hit you where it hurts. Are we putting Manny and Ortiz in the trash for this?
Well, definitely Manny can't be on the list.
Yeah. But wasn't Ortiz like mad because he was in the Mitchell Report or something like that?
He was not in the Mitchell Report.
I've lost track of what exactly. So I'm
it was
not
anonymous.
Trying to slander anybody.
It was an anonymous test that Rob Manfred himself said was bullshit. He's like, he could have tested positive for fucking Advil and it would have come up as a PED.
Did Rob administer the test? Do you think?
No, but he's a commissioner, so whatever he says goes, kind of thing.
He is the commish. What about Rafael Palmeiro?
Well, he never did steroids, period. Period. Who's that quarterback? Peyton Manning.
I don't think he's making my list.
Peyton Manning?
Yeah.
This is from the New York Daily News on, what is this? July 16th, 2016. Derek Jeter's trainer linked to pharmacist who allegedly supplied Peyton Manning with HGH.
Oh, boy. Okay. This could we may need like a whole document outlining the connections for people who have been removed from the list, because this gets pretty tenuous fast. If Jeets is going to be off the list.
He's off my list because I don't trust it.
Okay. That's fair.
Well, many of his Yankee teammates, including Roger Clemens, Andy Pettitte, Jason Giambi, and Alex Rodriguez, were linked to performance-enhancing drugs. Derek Jeter always remained above the steroid fray, but Jeter's play-by-play rules reputation may take a hit after the New York Times linked Jeter to Florida trainer Jason Riley, who founded a supplement company with Charlie Sly,
that's a bad
the pharmacist who
I don't
told
trust him.
Al Jazeera that an Indianapolis anti-aging clinic
I'm
had
having a really hard time following this story.
had shipped human growth hormone to the wife of Broncos quarterback Peyton Manning. The report does not provide any evidence that suggests Jeter violated Major League Baseball's steroid policy during his 20 seasons with the Yankees, but it does raise questions about the Yankees star's relationship with Riley, who founded Elements Nutrition with Sly, who has since claimed he lied when he told Al Jazeera that Geyer Institute had shipped HGH to Ashley Manning. Sly also used Riley's home address when he applied for a pharmacist license in Florida, the Times reported. According to a 2010 Daily News story, agent Casey Close, general manager Brian Cashman, and manager Joe Girardi hatched a plan to send Jeter to the Saddlebrook Resort, an elite training facility about 30 minutes from Tampa, to work with Riley. Jeter, who had become a liability at shortstop, worked with Riley to improve his defensive play.
So a couple of things. That story certainly raises questions. I have many, many more questions after hearing what you just said than I had.
Well, there's a little bit more. This from the New York Times. His most famous client, the man whose career was credited with reshaping and saving from mortality's shadow, was Derek Jeter. In 2010, a few years into Riley's makeover, the Daily News proclaimed, quote, "Derek is turning back the clock at short." ESPN declared that Riley had, quote, "dumped the captain into a hot tub time machine and turned him into a 25-year-old. Significant caveats are in order here. No evidence has emerged linking Jeter to performance-enhancing drugs, and Sly did not connect him to banned substances, although he boasted of helping other athletes obtain them."
Not good. Not good. Unfortunately,
so not going to make the cut for me.
Yeah,
Where there's smoke, there's fire, Jayhay.
That's true. Usually, I will say, Jeter's track record defensively sucked ass, even from that point forward. So I'm not really sure that
it worked.
There was this, pulling him back from the flames of mortality or whatever the Daily News article described it as. But yeah, lots of questions. I do have lots of questions. I won't be voting for Peyton Manning's wife for this list after hearing this. That's for damn sure.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm going to have to review Jeter's candidacy a little bit more closely now.
Yeah. I mean,
Never
some
get into
people are
business
saying that
with a
that's
man
damning.
named Sly either, I think, is another takeaway.
Mm-hmm.
Should be self-evident, but
yeah. But you do want to get into business with Lucy. 100% pure nicotine, always tobacco free. Lucy is not like every other nicotine pouch company that's owned by big tobacco. They're like the mom and shop of pouches. Who wouldn't want to support that? Little mom and shop pouch. The pouches come in a variety of strengths, from 4 milligrams all the way up to 12 milligrams. Lucy offers a unique variety of flavors, including apple ice, wintergreen, mango, and espresso. Yes.
I love espresso.
I know you do.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not a pouch guy or gal, Lucy Gum is available in 2 milligrams, 4 milligrams, and 6 milligrams. You can also set yourself up with a subscription and have Lucy delivered straight to your door. Obviously, I put the emphasis on espresso because it's become a favorite of mine. Lucy was cool enough to let me sample all the different flavors. They're all great. Obviously, wintergreen for me, is someone who does dip. Wintergreen is a classic. But you throw espresso at me as a flavor choice, yeah, I'm going to dabble. And if you are an espresso coffee fan yourself, I would say that you should 1000% dabble with, or at least just give it a shot. Just try it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I take your advice in a lot of ways. So
yeah,
definitely follow your guidance here.
Yeah. I mean, you can throw it in. I mean, people, if you're doing the nicotine pouches, everyone kind of does it whenever they feel like, but it's, you're at the golf course, you're at the office with your morning coffee. I've actually tried that where you throw in the espresso pouch and have coffee at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
That's the good stuff, brother.
Yeah, your head hit the ceiling.
It's just, it's different. That's like, I'm a routine guy.
Mm-hmm.
I like to start my mornings with coffee.
Yeah, of course. Oh, right there with you, brother.
Throw in a little Lucy nicotine espresso pouch. Yeah. Let's level up your nicotine routine with Lucy. Go to lucy.co/BID and use the promo code BID to get 20% off your first order. Lucy offers free shipping and has a 30-day refund policy if you decide to change your mind, but you won't.
No.
You will not.
That
is lucy.co. Use the promo code BID to get 20% off, and you are guaranteed free shipping. It's a hell of a deal. But again, those mint, mango, berry, citrus, apple cider, apple ice, and the aforementioned espresso. Check them out. Lucy.co. BID is the promo code.
Can I toss a non-baseball take at you before we run through these final
Please
topics?
do. Please do. Yeah.
The espresso comment kind of.
Yeah.
So obviously everybody loves espresso martinis now.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the most popular drink.
Shout out Kevin Clancy. That's where I started espresso martinis.
Wow. I basically taught that guy everything he knows, at least all the good stuff.
So shout out to Jayhay, really.
Is the espresso martini basically like the classy, like post-college version of the Red Bull vodka?
Vodka, yeah. It is.
Can we just call that? I mean, maybe somebody already said that. I'm sure many people have already said that, but I've never put it into the ether before. It just struck me. It's, I loved Red Bull vodkas in college. I'm a dabble. And it just, that drink at some point kind of makes you feel like a degenerate. I feel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think you also learned how super unhealthy vodka Red Bulls were.
The only time I've had one of those, I think post-college, was when I went to Vegas and sat at the tables.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, well, what's going to keep me here at this table? And it was like, oh, Red Bull vodka. But, it struck me that, espresso martinis are basically delivering the same sort of combo, just, in like your classy martini thing with the froth or, whatever, the beans. And glad we're on the same page.
It's a good take.
Yeah,
I don't know the science behind it in terms of, I would venture to guess that an espresso martini is safer on your heart than a Red Bull vodka.
Yeah. I would hope so, but we're talking about the same idea, right? That you've got basically an upper and a downer within the same drink.
Yeah.
Because
that can't be
is
good.
a downer, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Suppressant. But whatever, I mean, I'm not, no judge, do what, if you're still rocking that Red Bull vodka, then by all means, but
yeah, go for it.
Get your heart looked at.
Yeah. The Braves and Reds
are
going to be playing a game next season at Bristol Motor Speedway.
Mm-hmm. I don't often admit when I'm wrong because it does. I mean, I always admit when I'm wrong. It just doesn't happen very often. But I was wrong like right off the bat on this one. I was like, what is the point of this? And then, our faithful listeners chimed in with a few good answers. And I said, okay, I'm in.
What did they say?
Well, somebody provided a video, or I don't remember if it was video or photo, of the dimensions of what it may look like. And it's got kind of like a Polo Grounds sort of like carnival potential feel to it, where one outfield, I think it was right field, is like comically long and wide, and left field is like basically like 200 something feet or something like that. So I'm kind of if that's the dynamic they set up, I'm interested. I am curious whether the current MLB administration is going to, and players associations are going to allow kind of like a goofy field setup like that. That's one thing I'm curious about. But the overwhelming reason that was provided was that It houses like 140 or 150,000 people potentially.
Oh.
And while I'm at least initially a little bit skeptical that they can fill that sort of quantity of people for a Reds Braves game in Tennessee, if they can, that's going to be a phenomenal atmosphere. I mean, I would be curious to watch a baseball game with 140,000 spectators, regardless of who the participants are. So, obviously the answer is always money and, secondarily growing the game. But I'm now in on this concept. And the last thing I will say is that maybe Ronald Acuna will be back, but hopefully very much so Ellie De La Cruz will still be dominating for the Reds. And if that's the case and the field is kind of wonky and he can put a ball where he has a chance to like run around the bases, I think, for an inside the Parker or multiple triples or something like that, I think that could be a really fun watch. So I'm now in.
Yeah, I think I'm skeptical about the 140K, but even if it's half of that, that'll be awesome. Like half of that is still more than I think every big league ballpark. Like, is there a big league ballpark that carries 70 plus?
Not currently in rotation. No.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, I feel like the average is like 45, 50 maybe.
No, the trend has been to build smaller ballparks. I think the last remnants of the era you're talking about would be like the concrete cookie cutter ballparks from like the 70s. Those were probably the last ones that held anywhere near 70K.
Yeah. So this will be cool. Even if it's half that, I'll be excited about that. Complete side note here.
Mm-hmm.
Because people have been asking pretty much daily, when is the Baseball is Dead merch coming out? I've seen photos of actual printed Baseball is Dead merch. I do not possess it, but I've seen the photos.
Yes.
And it's pretty cool. They're doing like the Baseball is Dead logo with the size of the shirt it's like a heat printed as the tag on the neck too. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. So like Baseball is Dead will have like its pretty much its own line of like its brand of merch.
I've tried to put it out of my head. I feel like in some ways I've been waiting 7 years for merch on a show that I podcast on. So
specifically the Baines Meter shirt.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's been less than that, but I'm even going back to the previous show where we really didn't have proper merch either for the entire time that we were there. And I'm going to savor that day when I can put on a shirt to rep the show that I podcast on and parade that around town. And if it's the Baines Meter shirt, fucking even better. That's going to be great.
This is going to be a tease for anyone that exclusively listens on audio. You're going to have to go to the YouTube channel and please subscribe while you're there. I'm just going to hold up my phone and show the Baines Meter t-shirt.
Do it. Oh my gosh.
It's beautiful.
It's so beautiful.
It is.
I can't wait.
Yep. And then, of course, the back.
It's so cool. I can't wait. I'm going to wear that out like when I go out for dinner or something like that with my family, and just I'm going to be like a peacock around West Hartford, Connecticut.
Yeah.
Just wearing that shirt, washing it when I get home, putting it on the next morning, wearing it again the next day.
You should just like send a bunch of like blank t-shirts and get them printed for like a bunch of different colors.
That's smart.
Yeah.
Well, all of my brothers and my friends who have been loyal listeners the whole time that I've been participating, definitely going to get them Baines Meter t-shirts too. It's going to be a family affair. I'm going to account for a huge chunk. Well, actually probably not, because the whole world's going to buy Baines Meter t-shirts.
Correct.
So I'll probably account for a very small percentage, but I will be doing my part for sure.
Yeah. I'm very excited.
Me too.
There's one there's a Baseball is Dead t-shirt that so Corey, who does our graphics, designed a lot of these for Section 10 and for Baseball is Dead, and he's also a wrestling fan. So we came up with a Baseball is Dead shirt that's kind of a play off of a wrestling t-shirt that looks really fucking cool.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, I'm very excited about it.
Yeah, I want that merch too. I'm not just interested in the Baines Meter stuff. I want the BID. I'm getting it all.
There's a Dallas Braden pirate shirt that's very cool. Seen that one. There's some graveyard inspired baseball is dead merch.
Good. The people want it.
They're going to get it. They're going to get it. How about Ketel Marte? Deserving far more love than what he's gotten so far. I put that on the rundown. I was like, Jayhay is going to be able to take this home.
Yeah, I was excited to see that. We've kind of like sort of casually touched on him at different points this season, but it's usually been like he's got a broad base of skills and, you know, he's a little bit more difficult to appreciate than what Shohei Ohtani does. And he plays on the D-backs. And so it's been a little bit of praise, but also like, not like backhanded praise, but more just not sufficient for the season that he's having. So I was really pleased to go back to the original point that you put him on the rundown. A few things that I want to call attention to. So he's up to a 157 OPS plus on the season, which, you know, okay, whatever. You see some of the stuff that Judge or Soto or these people are putting up and you're like, okay, 157 for a second baseman, that is historically significant. It would be higher than any single season delivered in the entire careers of Ryan Sandberg, Roberto Alomar, or Craig Biggio, to name 3 Hall of Fame caliber, well, actually just in the Hall of Fame second baseman. And the 157 number specifically would be the 4th highest in a non-shortened season by a second baseman in the wild card era, behind only Jeff Kent's 2000, and then 2 different seasons, 2017 and 22, by Jose Altuve. So we're seeing one of the great second basemen, particularly in the NL seasons, that we've seen in the lifetimes of anybody who's participating in this podcast. That's the sort of season that Ketel Marte is having. If you don't want to deal an OPS plus, he's also hitting 300 with a 923 OPS traditionally, and he's at 5.1 FWAR, which is tied for 3rd in the NL entering play on Wednesday. So he is having a borderline MVP caliber season, regardless of how you slice it.
Since June 2nd, Ketel Marte is hitting 347, which is 3rd in the big leagues. He's gotten on base at a 423 clip, and his 668 slugging percentage is 3rd in baseball behind Judge and Vladdy Jr., but he's right there. It's Vladdy's 671, Marte 668. And he is rocking a 1092 OPS, which is sandwiched right between Aaron Judge and Juan Soto, second best in baseball.
Also, for those of you who like your players to perform in the quote unquote most important situations, he's hitting 333 with an OPS north of 1,000 in 127 plate appearances with runners in scoring position this season. And per Baseball Reference's leverage chart, he's hitting his best both by batting average and OPS in the highest leverage situations. So, for reasons we have laid out previously, I think it's going to be difficult for him to actually win the MVP. But the longer this goes on, the more secure he is in at least being a finalist and getting to the top 3. And honestly, who knows? Like, not that I'm wishing this upon Shohei, obviously, because he's my favorite player to watch. But if something were to happen, if he were to get injured, which has happened to him before, like, there would be a vacuum, a huge opportunity, and Ketel Marte would arguably be in the best position at this point to capitalize on that and actually win the MVP. So he's not that many events away from being arguably the MVP frontrunner, which is kind of crazy to say. I think I in particular was expecting that Corbin Carroll would evolve into the best player on the Diamondbacks this season if he wasn't already last season. And instead, Ketel Marte, who feels like he's been underrated for a long time, has just kind of found a new level, which is really cool.
He's also hitting a lot of home runs.
Yeah.
Like that same stretch since June started, basically. It's Santander 22, Judge 20, Ohtani 20, and Marte 18.
He's 4 away from tying his career high with 50 games left.
I think he's going to do it.
I think he will too. I think you will too. And by the way, that stretch of play that you have cited, where he's, A, played his best baseball, and B, been one of the best players in baseball, has also coincided with the Diamondbacks' turnaround themselves. So his improved play is directly correlating to wins on the field. And his win probability added shows that as well. He's one of the 10 best among batters in baseball. So I think we all sort of expected that we had seen the best of Ketel Marte prior to this season, and that turns out to be not the case.
Look at that.
Yeah, I'm glad we are giving him some love, though, because you're right that I think everybody else who's having the type of season that he's having, we have talked about with some length at some point on the podcast, other than him. And so it was due time.
I'm trying to figure out what the D-backs record is. I can probably pull that up.
Over what span?
Since he started cooking with gas here. Since, let's call it June 1st. Let's just throw a round number on there. Since June 1st to today is August 2nd. The Arizona Diamondbacks have the best record in baseball, Jayhay. 36-20. Best record in baseball.
There you go. There you go.
Right when Ketel Marte started to essentially be a top 3 player in baseball.
Yep.
Do you think that helps him with his MVP push at all? If the D-backs make the playoffs?
Totally. I mean, I think if the Diamondbacks are not a really relevant team in the final month and a half, 2 months of the season, what would have ended up happening was that people would just continue not talking about the season that Ketel Marte is having. And now that the Diamondbacks are squarely in the hunt as the defending National League champions, people are sort of being forced to have the Ketel Marte conversation, and that he's playing his best baseball, as we said, while that's happening, fits a narrative as a reason to talk about him. So
yeah.
I think for reasons that we've talked about in previous podcasts about how the NL wildcard race is shaping up, it certainly looks like the D-backs are going to be central to that conversation for the remainder of the season. So yes, that inevitably helps his MVP chances, opportunities. Obviously, the problem being that the guy in front of him in the MVP conversation is more likely than he and his team to win that division, the NL West. So if you're going to be looking to, what component of team success is happening here, then it's going to be hard to avoid Ohtani if he stays productive and healthy. But, I think another guy that I don't think he's gotten a lot of attention, but I don't think he's gotten MVP attention yet this season in the way that he should, is Elly De La Cruz. And I think one of the contrasts that's interesting between Ketel and Elly, other than the flashy factor, is that you have one team that's going to be relevant in the conversation moving forward, and one in the Reds that's, not terrible or anything, but very unlikely to be in a postseason conversation this season. So, how do voters splice the difference between Elly's value and Marte's value, which by advanced stats are roughly the same, and by FWAR, Elly would actually have the edge. So, kind of interesting from that level as well.
Well, get out to the ballpark and see these guys, the Elly De La Cruzes of the world, the Ketel Martes. And when you do, please use the Game Time app. It's an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer that it gets the first pitch, with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. Jake, are the Red Sox on this weekend?
Yep, playing the Astros at Fenway.
And we were going to go on Friday, but the weather sucks, yeah?
Yeah, weather looks terrible Friday, Saturday, unfortunately.
Jeez. I hate when we waste home Fridays, and that's going to be a big waste. I still might go. And if I do, I'm going to be downloading the Game Time app. They've got last-minute deals. Save up to 60% off by buying last-minute tickets for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. Save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or the event. Save even more when you choose a section you let Game Time choose the seats for you. They've got all-in pricing. Toggling this feature shows the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. Get a panoramic view in your seat in the app before you buy. The lowest price guarantee. Your game time will credit you 110% of the difference. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry today. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app. Create an account. Use the promo code BID for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account. Use the promo code BID for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Last thing for me, Jayhay. Luis Rengifo is going to be getting surgery on his wrist, and from an Angels perspective, no one really cares. I mean, like they're cooked anyway. It's not like their season depended on Luis Rengifo's return, but it was interesting to me because the injury occurred prior to the trade deadline, and I know that a lot of teams were checking in on Rengifo, who did not move at the deadline. Now we know why. Or maybe we didn't. Maybe teams were still trying to make a move, thinking that, all right, we'll trade for an injured player and like we'll get him back on the other side of this. But yeah, goes under the knife, and I feel like some teams dodged a bullet there.
Oh, they couldn't possibly have Rengifo takes. No, we have Rengifo takes. Don't worry. So here's my thing with this. To your point, like I think it makes sense why he didn't get traded after he came back from the injury, because the window between when he returned and when the trade deadline was very narrow. Like he returned on July 23rd. So they had essentially a week to prove his health. And unfortunately, between the time that he returned and the time that he was announced or his last game played, he hit 476 in 35 plate appearances. Most of those occurred before the trade deadline. So he didn't prove on the field that he was healthy. But my question is more like, or my light criticism, I guess, of the Angels is that, yes, it sucks from a leverage standpoint that one of your best trade assets got hurt in the weeks leading up to the trade deadline. Unfortunate. The reality, though, is that if the Angels were sober about their postseason odds and what they were likely to do this season, Luis Rengifo could have been traded, could and should have been traded before he got hurt. I pulled up the Angels postseason odds on July 1st. They were 0.7%. If you think that's being unfair because it's too close to when he actually got hurt, fine. On June 24th, they were actually worse. They were at 0.1%. So I know that teams like to wait until, the buying teams feel pressure or whatever to go out and get the Rengifo because better bats haven't proven to be. And this is obviously being done with a level of hindsight here. But the Angels were never going to be postseason relevant. They were never going to be serious participants in the 2024 season. And the idea that we don't know how aggressively Luis Rengifo was shopped in the period of June or prior to the injury, but you sure wish that a team that was so obviously out of it would have been more proactive with that asset in hindsight.
Yeah. Yep. Just another blow for the Angels.
Yeah. I mean, but not to like belabor it, but like so that's a fucked up trade deadline this year in some ways. And we all know how badly they botched the trade deadline in the opposite direction last season. So you've now had 2 trade deadlines pass that have not been properly managed, the vast majority of it due to your own mismanagement of the assets and some of it being poorly timed injuries. But like, that's how you don't catch back up. You know what I mean? That's how a 2 or 3 year turnaround or a 3 or 4 year turnaround turns into a 6 or 7 year full rebuild, administration turnover sort of stuff. It's just like that. That's a huge missed opportunity for the Angels. Why is Tyler Anderson still on the team?
That's a good question.
Maybe the answer is they didn't get offers they liked, and I have to defer to them on that. But like, what is the plan here? What are we doing?
I feel like we're going to be asking what's the plan here with the Angels until the day we die, Jayhay.
I think certainly as long as we're podcasting, maybe you and I will be doing. I mean, it probably won't be texting by then, when we're old men or something like that. But maybe we'll be able to appear like in, like in Star Trek where you go like, Scotty, beam me down or whatever, whatever that was.
Mm-hmm.
Star Trek. Yeah. Maybe we'll be able to beam to each other and be like, oh, the angels, what are they doing? I mean, Jake too, obviously, but he's a little young. He's a little younger, certainly younger than me.
Yeah, he'll have one of those chips implanted in his brain where you can like text with your eyes.
Yeah, he'll be able to edit that podcast that he's doing in 2075 so fast.
The fastest.
Yeah.
All right, that's it from me. Jayhay, you got any nugs today?
I do.
Please.
Let's go Tuesday game action nuggets first. I brought up Ellie. First thing, we can have a longer discussion about this in the future if he sustains it. But since we did the Ketel Marte, I'd love to do an Ellie De La Cruz MVP discussion at some point. Entering play today, Jared and Jake, he is 0.2 F4 away from a share of the NL lead among batters. That's how close he and Ohtani are. And I'm going to be curious to see if he is statistically equal or better than Ohtani by F4 or other wars. How the voters balance Ohtani's 40-40 season or 45-35 season or whatever it ends up being with what Ellie's going to do, which is leading me to my next nugget. Ellie De La Cruz is 2 stolen bases away from becoming the 5th player in MLB history to put up a 20-homer, 60 stolen base season. He currently has 58 stolen bases. The only players in history to ever do that are Ronald Acuna last season, Ricky Henderson 3 different times, Eric Davis, and Joe Morgan twice. You'll notice there that if Ellie De La Cruz does it, 3 of the 5 players ever to do it will have been Cincinnati Reds. He also recently became the 14th member ever of the 20-homer, 50 stolen base club and the 2nd youngest ever to join that behind Cesar Cedeno back in the 70s. James Wood he's been having himself quite a season since he came up, but he had himself quite a night last night. He became the youngest player in MLB history to have a game with a homer, a triple, 2 stolen bases, and 2 walks. The previous youngest was a man named Ben Chapman back in 1932. Wood also became the 3rd player in Nationals/Expos history with 3 or more triples in a 9-span game before turning 22, along with 2 names you may have recognized, Bryce Harper and Tim Raines. William Contreras of the Brewers is the first catcher with 2 doubles, a triple, and at least 4 RBI in a game since Joe Girardi in 1999. A few Wednesday starting pitching nuggets. For those tuning into the slate today, we've got a good one. Yusei Kikuchi, who may already be pitching by the time you listen to this podcast, 2:35 Eastern against the Rangers. A few things here. I'd be curious to get Dallas's opinion on this on Thursday, depending on how Kikuchi's start goes, actually. A few pitching trend nuggets. It was his first start with the Astros, as we all know, and I think everybody was like, wow, they paid a big price for Kikuchi. They must have a plan for Kikuchi. They had a plan for Kikuchi. Fewest 4-seamers by percentage thrown in his lone start so far with the Astros since late June, and his 3rd lowest rate overall this season. He threw only 2 curveballs, his fewest this season. Instead, he relied on the slider changeup combination. He threw a season high for sliders, both by quantity and rate, and a season high for changeups with 25, which was also the 3rd most ever in a start in his career. If you add up what batters did against the changeup and slider, the 2 pitches he leaned into, they were 1 for 12 with 10 strikeouts. Something to watch with Kikuchi in start number 2. The no-hitter man himself, Blake Snell, is back on the mound, 6:45 against the Nationals on the road. As a reminder, over his last 2 starts, 15 innings pitched, 2 hits, 0 runs. Over his last 5 starts, he has a 0.55 ERA, and batters are hitting 0.78 against him. And then if you're more of a night owl, one of the nightcaps is Mariners Tigers, and boy, are we in for a treat this evening. George Kirby against Tarek Skubal. Kirby has a 1.95 ERA over his last 12 starts, and obviously Skubal has been arguably the best pitcher in the AL all season. So 2 potential Cy Young contenders on the bump late night, and those are my nugs.
There you go. What time? What's the start time for Scoobel?
9. Did I say 9:35?
Oh, late one.
9:40. 9:40.
Prime
Tigers,
time.
Mariners. Yeah, that one's going to be worth staying up for. I'm going to prioritize that one. May take a nap this afternoon, so I'm ready to go.
There you go. Jake's takes.
Just really hope the A's win tonight because we could have an all-time grumpy Dallas tomorrow.
You if the A's lose tonight, his headphones ain't working tomorrow. No
Yeah.
No fucking chance. And he's gonna be like, Jake, what do I do? And you're gonna be like, plug them in. You know,
Yeah, right.
like, and then they'll work. He'll be like, motherfucker, is the list. You know,
Tomorrow's definitely gonna be a headphones day. I can already tell.
I can. You can just feel it.
You can smell it. It's in the air.
Those headphones are sending out waves right now, being like, we are gonna fucking really throw a wrench into Dallas day tomorrow. It's like all the little gremlins running around in those headphones.
Mm-hmm. One last shout out to Karl Ravech for coming on the podcast today. Had a very fun conversation with him as the Hot Seat Wednesday rolls on. Family Feud tomorrow, Jayhay. Family Feud. Very excited.
Jake and I are gonna fuck you guys.
Yeah, I feel like we're kind of unbeatable right now. We're feeling good about ourselves.
You lost last week.
I feel like we're gonna be unbeatable moving forward. You know?
Yeah, no, that's the attitude I want to see. Especially, we're really going to need a lot of that from you to combat whatever Dallas is going to be going through after this fat L he's going to suck on.
Not to throw my teammate under the bus, but I crushed last week. So, I mean, we didn't lose because of me, basically.
Yeah. Well, we'll see whether Dallas has his clutch factor.
We will. Hopefully, a merch update tomorrow.
Right.
We'll have at least some idea. I mean, like I'm supposed to be like a month ago at this point. I don't know.
At this point, I want to have one on my body, on the ground, whatever we do for the postseason.
Yeah, that'll definitely. I don't want to guarantee. I don't want to throw a Stevie P guarantee on it, but or a Bob guarantee. But that seems about as close to a Bob guarantee as we can get.
If and when we're on site for postseason action, either just BID or as a combo with Section 10, I want to be wearing a Baines meter or BID shirt.
That's a question for you, Jayhay. Where do you want to go?
Oh, in terms of locations?
Yeah.
I have some ideas.
Do you?
I think, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we talked about it. Maybe this is more of an offline conversation, but I think when we were sitting in the stands in Atlanta last year, we were lamenting in some ways where we were not. And I think that would be a tremendous place to end up at some point during this postseason.
I don't know if I remember where we want it to be.
Philadelphia.
I mean, that would have been my guess. But yeah, Philadelphia. Whew. That's the place to be in the postseason.
I think that is whatever round, planning is whatever plan is the smartest. Per round, I think we need to make sure that we are doing something in Philly at some point during the postseason.
I would agree. What an experience that was.
And if it's not the World
to be there.
Yeah, if we get the wild card first round, we do something like that, and then maybe we who knows? Maybe we could get lucky with a great World Series matchup too. Red Sox, Phillies.
Ooh.
Oh my God.
That would do it for me.
Can you imagine all the tent?
That'd be weird because I like the Phillies.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe it would be better if it was like we could do like a Dodgers Red Sox revisit.
I guess. Been there, done that.
You could lean into your
Mookie.
You could lean into your Mookie thing. Must have been hard hearing Ravvy say that.
Yeah, I mean, he sucks. Mookie
Ravvy? That's right.
No. I mean, he's not playing. When's the last time he got a hit?
It's been a long time.
Yeah. So. All right. We'll be back tomorrow with Family Feud and Dallas Braden answers for his war crimes against the Baseball is Dead family.
Yeah. Baseball decency.
Mm-hmm. All right. We'll see you then. Bye.
We gone.